For quite a while, various companies with ties to computer gaming have attempted to tap into the console market. The success of these companies has been rather mixed, however. From Commodore CD32 and CD-TV to the Apple Pippin, to the unreleased Phantom console that was supposed to bring the PC to the living room, to Nvidia and Razer's various attempts at marketing Android devices, nothing they do catches on. The one exception could possibly be the Xbox line, but Microsoft lost billions of dollars launching the original, and also lost at least $1 billion with the Red Ring fiasco and having to replace at no cost broken consoles. If anything though, the biggest impact the Xbox had on gaming was that it helped bring many PC developers and Western developers over to console. The Xbox 360's live arcade service also helped kickstart some of the first indie titles, and despite the indie scene shifting over to the PC, many indie games still get console releases. At the same time, PC gaming has undergone somewhat of a revival thanks to Steam, at least among vocal internet gamers. While the PC lacks in AAA exclusives, it makes up for that in actually getting ports of many console-exclusive games, as many Eastern developers who used to shun the PC are now making PC ports of their games in an attempt at reaching the vocal internet audiences who don't want to buy new consoles or who only have Acer gaming laptops. At the same time, however, Valve is worried about one potential competitor, Microsoft. Now, currently, Microsoft has been unpredictable with regards to PC gaming, and they have also been slowly eking towards a walled garden ecosystem on the desktop, similar to what Apple already does. There have also been games announced by Microsoft that are Windows 10 only, shutting out those refusing to upgrade their system. Thankfully for Valve, there's an operating system called Linux. It's free, open source, and easily runs on tons of hardware out there. So Valve decided to slap it on a bunch of systems, get some hardware partners, install on machines, and sell it. However, as poor sales of microconsoles have shown, just dropping your console in Walmart or Target isn't going to make it a huge seller. So let's break down what exactly is wrong with the Steam machines in a top 5 format. After all, if Valve wants to succeed, they need to know what makes people buy consoles. So let's start with problem number 5. And that is weak hardware. When Microsoft was developing the Xbox 360 years ago, one thing they did not want was to be Dreamcasted. After all, the Sega Dreamcast was a fairly recent failure, and one of the reasons it failed was because the PlayStation 2 came out not long afterwards with superior hardware. A more recent example could be the Wii U and the various microconsoles that have come to market, as they have not sold very well. And their sales numbers prove that you need powerful hardware to sell a console. Now, even though the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 have been derided as weak and underpowered by internet commentators, there are quite a few hardware things they got right. For example, both consoles feature USB 3.0, a Blu-ray drive for installed media, octa-core processors, and 8 gigs of RAM. Sure, they likely won't be as powerful as anything Intel puts out, but I'm guessing AMD had to have given both companies a pretty good deal if they were to take it. Both consoles also feature x86 processors. Now, while x86 isn't the best CPU architecture out there, it's practically the industry standard, and it's what nearly every developer prefers. Most desktops, laptops, a good number of servers, and even some cell phones and tablets feature x86 processors. Steam machines, on the other hand, suffer from weak and underpowered hardware. Let's take a look at Alienware's Steam machine. The base model, which retails for around $450, features a dual-core Intel i3, 4 gigs of RAM, and a GeForce GTX video card, you don't get to know the model number of it, with 2 gigs of RAM. If you want, say, an i5 or i7 and 8 gigs of RAM, which is an actual quad-core, you'll have to pay more money. The second lowest cost Steam machine, for only $500, gives you 4 gigs of RAM, an R9 270, and an Athlon X4 840, a quad-core CPU based off the controversial clustered multi-thread design AMD uses. This leaves the CPU equal to only a dual core and floating point power, and next-gen systems do not use this. Considering how the next-gen consoles have CPUs which are declared weak in comparison with modern Intel hardware, this is absolutely laughable for a system that costs more than next-gen consoles. Which brings me to my next point, which is problem number 4, the price. Now, many of the lower-end Steam machines not only cost more than a next-gen console, but also have weaker hardware. For around $450 to $500, you're getting worse hardware than a next-gen console, which already has 8 gigs of RAM and an octa-core processor. When you see how much all the Steam machines go for in the end, however, you're looking at a line of computers from several different companies that can cost anywhere from around $450, which is more than the PS4's launch price, to over $5,000, which is not only a lot more than what even many PCs cost, but even start to approach workstation territory with regards to pricing. Even a Mac Pro of all things costs less than the most expensive Steam machine. Sure, some of the Steam machines might have nice specs, but let's be honest. Buying hardware that costs that much for simply gaming is quite stupid. Thankfully, Steam machines run Linux, and you can likely replace Steam OS with another Linux distribution or even Windows. At the same time though, what's stopping you, the consumer, from just going out and flat out buying or building a PC? Now, while we're on that page, problem number 3 is the retailability of these Steam machines. Only one store is going to be carrying Steam machines this holiday season, and that is GameStop of all places. Do you love GameStop? Well, good for you, because they'll have the Steam machines. Prefer to buy your consoles at Best Buy, Target, Walmart? Well, too bad, because they won't likely have the Steam machines that you want this holiday season. However, they will have quite a few Windows-based PCs, and so will Micro Center. In fact, Micro Center would be more than happy to sell you any other PC. And is GameStop even going to be having a huge selection in their tiny store? I mean, they might just be another thing that GameStop tries to sell in an attempt at trying to stay relevant and expand the variety of things they sell in their store, especially as more and more gamers go and buy digital games. I've seen my local GameStop try to sell everything from Zunes back when those were new, to tablets for quote gaming, to used DVDs, to even used iPhones and iPods in attempts at staying relevant. And now I went into my GameStop and they're selling collectibles based off the most generic franchises and movies nerds know about. And my GameStop is even trying to sell cell phone plans. I mean, yeah, GameStop is the first place I want to go when I want to buy a cell phone plan, right? So considering GameStop's track record on this, who knows if you'll even be able to get a Steam machine easily with these kind of business practices. Now, problem number 2 is the optimization of games on this platform. Now, the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 are derided by many PC gamers as being weak and underpowered. In comparison to the Xbox 360 and PS3 though, they are vastly more powerful, but at the same time, they're weaker than a PC that costs nearly $1,000 that someone assembled from parts purchased at Micro Center. So how can they run games so well? Well, it comes down to this little thing called optimization. On a non-fragmented platform like the Xbox One or PS4, it's easier to optimize the game. Everyone has the same console with the same hardware. You can buy a new 360 from Best Buy today and it'll still be able to play early games such as Gears of War, Cameo, Crackdown, Halo 3, Mass Effect, and more. And on the flip side, you can still run games such as Call of Duty Black Ops 2 or Advanced Warfare, Halo 4, Dragon Age Inquisition, Shadow of Mordor, and more on a Falcon or maybe even an older Xenon console, assuming you have one that didn't red ring years ago. On the PC, you have 3 different GPU vendors, 2 different CPU vendors, various motherboard designs with different components, and a wide range of designs and part combinations. You also have 5 major Windows versions in use, various software versions, and even some programs and APIs which are rapidly changing. Just look at all the controversy in the Linux community over GNOME 3 and Systemd. This results in PC-specific problems like games requiring new or specific older drivers in some cases to run fine, or games running fine only on one GPU vendor. And there also seem to be a lot more console ports on the PC too as of recently. At best, you'll have a game with console-oriented menus, matchmaking, graphics on the same levels the consoles, and no official mod support, but at least they'll run fine. And at worst, you'll have games which don't even support the mouse and menus, games with terrible performance, games that pretty much require a controller to properly play, and in some cases games that display bizarre messages about connecting to Xbox Live or plugging your controller in on the PC. And it really makes you wonder if it's worth it to pay more for all this hardware if you're just going to be running a few video games on it. What's the point of an R9 380 if a game is just going to max it out while displaying console level graphics? I doubt a few $100s is worth only a clearer picture. But let's get to the biggest problem with Steam machines though, and that is the games. You see, one of the big reasons all those consoles I mentioned earlier failed, along with every small indie console ever, is the fact that they lacked games and player bases. When it comes to any sort of service involving content delivery and social media combined, consumers want two things: content and other users. Every time you hear about a new PC game or game coming to the PC, chances are it's not coming to the Steam OS. You'll click the game Steam page and you'll only see the Windows flag, no Mac or Steam logos. Valve claims over 1,500 games are on Steam OS. However, many of the big games that people are talking about on Steam currently don't have a Linux version or Steam OS version. Games such as Skyrim, Metal Gear Solid 5, Grand Theft Auto 5, The Witcher 3, DayZ, Arma, Rocket League, Fallout, and more have no Linux version. And I'm not even getting to the games popular on consoles that lack Linux versions, and in some cases PC versions in general. And these are games such as FIFA, Madden, Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, and more. And to make matters worse, many games that even have a Linux version outside of Steam don't have a Steam OS or even their Linux versions on Steam. Games such as Unreal Tournament 2004, Quake 3, Quake 4, Doom 3, and others lack SteamOS versions, yet are easily available on Linux and Steam and could likely run on SteamOS. Now, what games does SteamOS have though? Well, aside from a few big name games such as Metro Redux, every Valve Source Engine game, Terraria, XCOM Enemy Unknown, Civilization 5, Shadow of Mordor, Borderlands 2, and a few more, nearly all of the games on SteamOS are indie games or games from smaller developers. While there are a few notable indie games on Steam, there are also a lot of games that gamers simply don't care about. A console gamer, for example, is more likely to buy Wasteland 2, for example, than Freedom Planet. Even some bigger indie games don't have Linux versions. For example, Undertale does not currently have a Linux version, and neither do any of the Five Nights games. Let's get back to the second thing I mentioned, which is the user base. Now, one thing that convinces people to buy a console is, does everybody else play it? This is especially key with multiplayer games. A person is more likely to buy an Xbox One or PlayStation 4 if the person they follow on YouTube buys one, or if their friend buys one, and if they want to play together online. Many PC games have lackluster player counts compared to the console versions. Sure, some free-to-play game won't be huge along with Counter-Strike, but how many of those people do you see playing Call of Duty? Now sure, Call of Duty has taken a hit on the PC, as many older players were alienated by the shift in focus to being a console game along with other gameplay changes, along with the fact that Steam blocks pirated copies from playing online. But even when it still had players, more people were playing on the Xbox and PlayStation versions. The same goes with many other big games that people are playing. Many big YouTubers will simply plug in an Elgato to their console and record footage from it, while other people will buy the console version. Developers have learned that making a game on other platforms besides the PC boosts sales and funds production of their games on other platforms. Both Crytek and CD Projekt Red have said just this, with Crytek going as far as saying they would never make another PC exclusive game ever again after Crysis was heavily pirated. Minecraft, which is the best-selling PC game of all time, also has sold more on consoles than it did on the PC, despite the console versions coming out later and being technically inferior. If your friends are playing the game on the Xbox One and you want to play with them, you'd buy an Xbox One. Paying more for an underpowered system with fewer games and a poor player base makes no sense. And now it's time for a few honorable mentions, the first one being the controller. The controller is highly controversial and very different from what many gamers are used to or want. Why is this a mention though? Well, Steam machines allow you to use the Xbox 360 controller on them, at least from what I can tell. If you believe that the Steam controller is the greatest, hippest, and trendiest controller ever though, it will be available for use on your regular PC and you won't need to buy a Steam machine for it. And now the other honorable mention is the fact that the system is digital only. Now while this is less of a big deal than it is in the past considering how mainstream digital is on consoles, there are a lot of gamers who complain about either maxing out the 500 gig storage on their consoles and having to delete stuff frequently, and there have also been lots of gamers complaining about bandwidth caps, as could be seen with the whole Fatal Frame physical release campaign, and of course the Xbox One DRM saga too. But at the same time, I've made this an honorable mention because Steam does not seem to have a user base who cares about that kind of stuff. After all, look at how Steam retail games are pretty much keys that you have to enter in online, like they're no different than Steam keys that you can buy anywhere online except for the fact that you get a disc with them. And even then, you have publishers who will either just ship a disc with the Steam installer on them, like with Metal Gear Solid 5, or they will ship the game with critical files missing, like with Fallout 4. Now, while many gamers seem to have given up on the whole DRM issue, with one website that covered DRM in games even going as far as to close down by saying no one cared anymore, there are still a few people out there who care about DRM in their games. For example, Richard Stallman called Steam unethical as they distribute non-free computer games with digital rights management. And let's not forget the whole Xbox One DRM fiasco back in 2013, though I've noticed not a single person making a big deal out of Steam machines lacking the ability to even physically purchase games. So I'm guessing it's okay when Valve does it, right? All in all, Valve needs to learn why people buy consoles and what people want out of them. Consoles aren't for PC gamers, they're for those who want something that, quote, just works. Imagine if someone bought a new game and their Steam machine wouldn't run it, but their neighbor's one would. Plus, Steam machines lack all the big games, while Windows has them, and Steam machines can cost a ton. They are likely going to fail and become forgotten about quickly, and if you really want to use Steam on Linux, you can just download Linux as it's a free operating system. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more.